It's a case that spans over 3 decades.
Yeah, sometimes justice can be delayed, but justice eventually arrives.
With details almost too bizarre to believe.
When she smiled in her booking photo, was that a surprise to any of the detectives?
No.
A conspicuous clown costume.
They noticed someone dressed as a clown exit the vehicle and approach the front door. The clown had 2 balloons as well as a bouquet of flowers.
A grisly murder.
It was at that time that the clown pulled out a gun and shot Marlene in the face.
And a love triangle where the suspect turns bride?
The defendant would marry Michael Warren, the deceased husband, in August of 2002.
This is Crimes of Passion by Law&Crime. I'm Sierra Gillespie. Wellington, Florida is an upscale village in Palm Beach County, but it's no stranger to high-profile criminal cases.
You can look at the gamut of our cases in our history of this office, from Jeffrey Epstein to Rush Limbaugh, William Kennedy Smith, to Tiger Woods DUI, to Robert Kraft's spa case.
And yet this case puts all the rest to shame.
I don't think I've ever had a case that is closer to a movie.
It's Saturday, May 26th, 1990, Memorial Day weekend. 40-year-old Marlene Warren is at her Wellington home making breakfast for her 21-year-old son Joey Aarons and some of his friends. It's a happy-go-lucky morning, kicking off the summer when, out of nowhere, comes a knock at the door.
A vehicle pulled up in the driveway. They noticed someone dressed as a clown exit the vehicle and approach the front door.
Marlene answers the door to find a mysterious clown on the front steps, holding a gift.
One balloon said, "You're the greatest," and the other one, I believe, was a Snow White balloon, and said something to the effect of, "Oh, how nice."
But just moments later, everything changes.
It was at that time that the clown pulled out a gun and shot Marlene in the face.
Marlene grew up hundreds of miles away from sunny Florida in the small Michigan farm town of Utica. Marlene's parents remember her as a fun-loving girl whose favorite pastimes included spending time on the farm with her sisters, baking, and, ironically, painting pictures of clowns. By the time she was 15, Marlene had given birth to her first son, John Jr., named after her first husband, John Aarons. The couple would later welcome a second son, Joey. But before Marlene even reached adulthood, her husband, John Sr., died in a tragic car accident. By the time she's 22, Marlene is living as a single mother, raising 2 young boys, when she meets 19-year-old Michael Warren. The couple gets married and moves to Florida to be closer to Mike's family. To start, Marlene and Mike operate a meat inspection company. It soon becomes so successful that Mike has enough savings to open a used car lot called Bargain Motors. As the years go on, the Warrens' rental property inventory grows, and from afar, their life seems perfect. That is, until 1988, when 22-year-old John Jr. is killed in a car crash, the same way his biological father died years prior. It's then that a strain between Marlene and Mike begins to grow, and Sheila Keene enters the picture.
It was rumored that Sheila Keene and Michael Warren were having an affair.
Sheila and Mike meet at Bargain Motors, where Sheila and her then-husband worked as independent contractors. Co-workers soon begin to notice Sheila and Mike were closer than other employees, from spending extra time working together to enjoying extra long lunches. By 1990, Sheila has left her husband, and Mike begins to secretly pay for Sheila's rent. So when Marlene Warren is gunned down in her own entryway, detectives immediately start the investigation into Mike and Sheila.
You mentioned a relationship between the two of them. Was there a relationship, if you can say, at the time period?
People had been interviewed, and there was statements that they were involved. However, both had denied being involved in a relationship at the time of the murder.
And yet the details of the murder are ones detectives just can't get out of their minds.
Marlene answered the front door, and the clown had 2 balloons as well as a bouquet of flowers, and went to hand Marlene those items, and as she went to receive those items, she commented, "How nice." It was at that time that the clown pulled out a gun and shot Marlene in the face.
Can you reiterate what she said before she shot her and what the balloon said?
One balloon said, "You are the greatest," and the other one, I believe, was a Snow White balloon, and said something to the effect of, "Oh, how nice."
Those were the last words Marlene Warren ever said before she was gunned down in her own doorway. 2 days later, she died at the hospital after being removed from life support. Early on, investigators were able to rule out Mike as the killer given his airtight alibi. He was at the racetrack at the time of the murder, so investigators begin to zero in on Sheila instead. Early on, the pieces begin to fall into place. A Publix grocery store is the only place in all of Palm Beach County that sells the type of Mylar balloons found near Marlene's body. That Publix is just a short drive away from where Sheila is living, and workers report seeing someone matching her description purchase the balloons less than 2 hours before the murders. But there are more eyewitness accounts too.
Would you say that you were able to get a fairly good look at her face, as well as her body type and those types of things?
Yes,
How did she purchase the items, the clown costume, the wig, and the makeup?
I don't remember.
You don't remember if it was
If I had to guess, probably cash.
Okay.
Multiple employees at a costume shop specifically remember a woman matching Sheila's description, rushing to purchase a clown costume just 2 days before Marlene's murder.
May 25th, Dinah and I were in the process of, well, we had closed the store, we had locked the front door, closed out the register, so business of the day was finished, and there was a knock on the door. So we went to the door and asked if the person could come back. It was a woman. Can you come back tomorrow? And she said, no, I really need something now. It won't take me long. I know exactly what it is that I want. And she said it was a clown costume. That's what she was interested in.
And the young lady that you said came to the door, can you describe her appearance as best as you can?
She was tall, a little bit taller than me.
How tall?
I'm 5'7.5", but I don't know if I had on heels. That day I tended to wear high heels more.
Okay.
So that could put her closer to 5'9", 5'10". And she was dressed in a pair of then we call them men's jeans, a straight leg, pipe leg. And she had on a man's long sleeve shirt. It was that style, like a man's jean shirt would be, with a collar and a long cuff. Oh, yes, I really remember her footwear. She was wearing what then at the time I was called men's construction, like a shoe boot. I really like them because I've been looking for some for myself. And so we had one or two statements about that. I told you that I really liked her. She did not have on any makeup from what I could tell, long chocolate hair and beautiful big brown eyes.
So she comes to the door, walk us through your interaction with this person.
All right, she comes through the door. We have the short conversation that I just explained to you. We let her in and I walk her back to the area of the store where the clown costumes were. We do have an ample supply of costumes to choose from, but at that point it might have been a little bit less than what we normally hear in any event. So one of the questions that we would ask is this costume for you, or about how tall is the individual that would be wearing the costume? Because different companies would have sizes that they would list in different ways.
Okay.
So I pulled one out and placed it up to myself so that she could see what it would look like, the length of it and everything. And she said that's fine. So it was a large. And then we chose a wig. She requested a wig. And the one that we chose was called a short afro curly wig. I took those things to the front register, which was around the corner, while Dinah, the lady that I was working with at that point in time, assisted this woman with makeup.
While the customer purchasing this clown costume was only in the store for 15 minutes, both workers say they got a good look at her.
Were you given any additional information from law enforcement about kind of what had happened?
No, they just wanted to bring me in to look at some pictures.
What, if anything, did they ask you? Did they talk to you about a potential customer? What was it they said to you?
Yes, I believe it was something to that effect, from a customer that had come to the store that I had sold, I sold this costume to, and they wanted to see if I could identify who it was.
Thank you. Now you said you looked at some photographs.
Yeah, then they showed me pictures.
They showed you pictures, and when they showed you pictures, were you given any instruction? Were you given any guidance about what they wanted you to do?
They said to if the person, if the customer is one of those pictures, to just point it out.
Okay. Now the customer, specifically, you knew they meant the customer that bought the clown costume, was it 2 days prior?
Yes.
And so they showed you some photographs.
Yes.
Did they try to indicate to you which photograph they wanted you to pick? In other words, we want you to select this photograph, and you think this person's involved.
No, they just gave me the pictures, and I don't remember they sat down.
Both costume store employees separately pick Sheila out of a lineup. But that's not all the evidence detectives will find. The day of the murder, Marlene's son Joey is the only eyewitness to the actual crime. He reports seeing the clown drive off in a white Chrysler LeBaron after pulling the trigger.
The Chrysler LeBaron was a rental car from a Payless rental car, which was a different business from Mike Warren's business, which was Bargain Motors. The people who had rented the car had seen an ad in the newspaper, and they went to try and return the car early. Michael Warren's business had Payless in his ad as well, so the people became confused and called the number, thinking it was Payless, but it was actually Bargain Motors. And somebody at Bargain Motors answered the phone and told them to leave the car and to leave the keys there. They did so, and that's when Michael Warren and Sheila King Warren and another individual went and picked up the car.
Before detectives officially confirm this, they find the white LeBaron abandoned in a Winn-Dixie parking lot the day before Marlene's funeral. Inside the car, investigators find orange curly fibers matching a clown wig and long brown hair matching Sheila's. And yet, the case goes cold. At the time of Marlene's murder, DNA testing is still relatively new. The tests aren't even yet available, so investigators can't compare the evidence found in the LeBaron to Sheila's DNA. And with that, the case grinds to a screeching halt. Sort of. It's an open secret that Sheila is responsible for Marlene's murder. She and Mike deny ever having an affair, but those comments lose a lot of credibility when they take their relationship public.
We now have learned since then that they have married, and they are currently married. They were living in the Tennessee, Virginia area.
In 2002, Sheila officially marries Mike. She dyes her hair blonde, changes her first name to Debbie, and they leave Florida together.
The defendant and Michael Warren subsequently owned a restaurant in Tennessee called the Purple Cow. Documentation evidence would be presented to show that the defendant would marry Michael Warren, the deceased husband, in August of 2002. And the two would live together in Abington, Virginia until her arrest in 2017.
Months, weeks, and years go by, with Sheila and Mike living in wedded bliss. But unbeknownst to them, the investigation in Palm Beach County, Florida, never stopped.
Although justice delayed is justice denied, at least you can restore a measure of justice, even if it is many years later.
That's former Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg.
Well, the key breakthrough in this case was new technology. It didn't exist back in 1990 when this murder occurred. And so we have the benefit of DNA technology and other technology that allowed us to pinpoint that it was this defendant who committed this crime. Prosecutors are ethically bound only to charge when they have a reasonable belief that they can get a conviction beyond any reasonable doubt. That's a high burden to reach. And so just because you have a hunch or even probable cause, it's not enough for a prosecutor to pursue charges. You've got to have more than that. And with new technology, that's what allowed us to make the arrest.
Back in 1990, I believe back then they just had AVO typing and things like that. So now we have nuclear DNA, we have touch DNA, we have mitochondrial DNA, and all of those things together allow us to be able to test items that weren't able to be tested back in 1990. So it has definitely led us to be able to solve a lot of our cold cases through the advances in technology.
Sheila is arrested after a grand jury indicts her on September 26, 2017 on a charge of first-degree murder.
The case is still ongoing.
What was her demeanor when detectives approached her? I mean, it's been 27 years. People forget, and they sometimes, their memory isn't the same. So was she under duress when she realized that this door was closing on her back?
I don't believe that I would say she was under duress. I believe it was more of a nonchalant attitude.
When she smiled in her booking photo,
Yes.
was that a surprise to any of the detectives?
No.
Sheila still denies any involvement with the murder. Early on, her defense team tries to poke holes in eyewitness testimony and the police lineup.
But
You all right?
these lineups were not built out of the eyewitnesses' descriptions of the found customer. Detective Williams interviewed Sheila Warren, already suspecting that Sheila Warren was involved in this murder, took a Polaroid photo of her on that day, not a high school photo of her, a photo from May the 27th, the same day that he interviewed Rosales and showed that photo to him. That's a contemporary photograph.
As the case moves forward, the defense continues to find issues with the prosecution's evidence.
The two things, as Detective McCann pointed out in her initial deposition, that led to her establishing probable cause that changed from their initial investigation until now, were that 6 to 8 inch fiber that miraculously appeared on this balloon ribbon, and DNA strands of hair found in the white LeBaron. Secondly, the DNA from the 2 strands of hair found in a white LeBaron. The state has, or we have since deposed Brandy Christian from the FBI, and she has essentially confirmed everything that we brought up. We have additional evidentiary support now for the statements we were making at the Arthur hearing. First, regarding the route, she acknowledged that in her report. She said, Ms. Keen Warren cannot be excluded. There was also a male, and she did not, and as our expert said, and any other expert would say, indicate in her report that the male was the major contributor of a route that was cleaned. That should be a single source. You pull a hair out, you clean it, there should be one person's DNA on it. So that, was since confirmed by the FBI.
Sheila's defense attorney, Greg Rosenfeld, speaks out to the media, too.
So it sounds like this evidence just keeps turning up and turning up week after week.
And that's the problem. And that was her argument in court, which, is at some point it's not negligent, it's willful, and that's the argument we made. You can only make a mistake so many times, and at some point these mistakes are compounded, and they become willful.
How compelling, Greg, do you think that evidence is?
I think it's very compelling. I mean, as we've stated from the beginning, our client's innocent. Ms. Keen Warren did not commit this crime. She has, been sitting in jail for 5.5 years now. We're looking forward to, our day in court. She's looking forward to her day in court. And again, we're getting geared up. I don't think she was a suspect of convenience. I know she was a suspect of convenience. As I've stated before, it was a easy narrative for PBSO to go with, and they just didn't look anywhere else from the beginning, and it's very unfortunate. And that's a problem we very often see in investigations. Once you fixate on a suspect with no evidence and don't look elsewhere, this is what happens. And it's incredibly unfortunate. And we see in our system very often it leads to wrongful convictions.
Almost 6 years after her arrest and 33 years after Marlene's murder, there's a sudden moment of resolution, not through a verdict, but a plea deal.
The state of Florida and the defendant agreed to the following plea in the circuit court. In the aforesaid case number, Ms. Keen Warren, the defendant herein, will agree to withdraw her previously entered plea of not guilty and her plea of guilty to the following charges: to count 1, guilty of second-degree murder, a lesser included crime. The defendant is pleading guilty because she's guilty, and a factual basis does exist for the crime that a jury could find sufficient to prove the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant understands if the court accepts the plea.
Sheila maintains she didn't kill Marlene, but accepted a plea deal strategically. Prosecutors, however, still lay out all the evidence against her.
If this case were to proceed to jury trial, the state would present evidence and prove the following facts to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt: that on or about May the 26th of 1990, the defendant was responsible for the death of Marlene Warren at her home in Wellington. Said act that caused the death of Marlene Warren being imminently dangerous and demonstrating a depraved mind without premeditated and designed intent to kill. The state would present evidence and witnesses, civilian witnesses from inside of the home, who would testify before this court that they observed a clown come to the front door, hand Miss Marlene Warren balloons and flowers before shooting her in the face. That caused her death.
Before a sentence is handed down, the only eyewitness to the actual murder and Marlene's only living son gives a victim impact statement.
My name is Joseph Aarons.
Okay, and what's your relationship to the victim in this case?
That was my mother.
Okay. And would you like to address the court at this time?
The only thing I want to say is, all through this trial, I didn't see any remorse. And that's all I have to say.
Has Mr. Scott reviewed with you the plea, and are you in agreement with the terms?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Thank you, sir. If you have anything else that you want to say, this is your opportunity if you'd like, sir.
God be with her.
Sheila Keen Warren is ultimately sentenced to 12 years in prison, with 7 years of credit for time served as she awaited trial. Sheila is released from prison on November 2nd, 2024, after serving only an additional 18 months behind bars. She now lives with Michael Warren in Abington, Virginia, and the couple still maintain they had nothing to do with Marlene's murder. A family fractured with heartbreak when a loving mother is gunned down in her own doorway. But even after a conviction and sentence, the defendant still claims her innocence and now spends the rest of her days married to her victim's widower. This has been Crimes of Passion by Law&Crime. I'm Sierra Gillespie.